Right, Andy, what do I need to know about you that's shaped who you are and where you are today?
Oh, I guess there's probably three areas that you would need to know if you wanted to have what shaped me fully. First one is probably the biggest life event, straight into the deep end. My mum actually passed away from cancer when I was younger. So when I was 10, she had unfortunately passed away. That is probably the biggest shift and the biggest thing that has happened to me in my life. I don't like to make it something that I would talk to everyone about, as in, I don't want it to be the reason as to why people should feel sorry for me or people should, think, oh, he must be so sad or he must be so upset. But that has genuinely taught me some of the best lessons I've ever learned in my life so far, of the pain and the suffering that you have to go through and the value that you can get out of that and actually having that happen. So I'd say that's the first one to truly shape me into basically having to grow up very, very quickly and understanding the real world very, very quickly, earlier than I'd hoped. The second one was when I left school into university and I went and done accountancy for the first year. And this was to follow the traditional path and go and get a good job, good money. You'll be able to go on nice holidays and do the nice things because you've got a steady job. And that was possibly the second worst year of my life. It was terrible. It was so boring. And the life that was leading towards and the people I was around at the time, it just, yeah, it was a complete loser mentality of what I wanted to achieve in my life. And I thought at that point, it surely cannot be this. That surely can't be it. It can't be getting the safe job and then that's it. Life is just smooth sailing, because it wouldn't even be smooth sailing. You would just turn into a robot and it'd be shit. So the third kind of, I guess, arc that brought me to this point is after that accountancy year, I went and done sports coaching for a year at college because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I've played sport all my life. It was kind of what I knew. So gave me a year to do that, and I actually started Twitch streaming as my first business at that time. Halfway through that year, I realized I really wanted to give this a proper go. After the year had been done, I took a year out to actually fully focus on the Twitch streaming. And that was the realization that there was far more to what life could offer me by pushing for my own thing and doing the stuff that would scare the living crap out of me. Because at that point, I didn't tell anyone that I'd done the Twitch streaming for a year, as I was too scared to get bullied. I was too scared to be basically shunned for what I was doing. And it taught me a lot about, self-confidence and growing as an individual. Eventually I did tell my friends and they were actually really supportive. It was just my brain telling me that they would bully me for the sake of it. People, I'm guessing, talked about me behind my back. That's always going to be the case. But those are probably the three big story arcs for me that have shaped me into who I am today. I'd say in the last few years, there's probably been massive shifts in who I am, but those have been the ones that have certainly molded me into pushing for this person that I am today.
Are you happy if we kind of press into some of them a little bit further?
Yeah, it's always right.
Cool. So, just interesting on what you've said there at the very start
Yeah.
around, obviously, with the passing of your mum and the, you didn't say this, but it's almost like the hiding of that to a degree. And I'm not saying that you're hiding that intel, but something
Yeah.
that's interesting, right, is I've known you for years now. And I would say for the first 18 months of me knowing you, I didn't know that that was the case. And with that being happening at such a like pivotal point in the nurturing of like a child, right? At the
Yeah.
age of 10, it's at the point where you're starting to gain like a conscious brain and like we're highly malleable, etc. Just to like your point where you were like, I don't want to be seen as someone who uses that for sympathy, etc. Talk to me about that. Like, what is that?
I have seen a lot of people who I know and online as well who use the passing of a loved one as their way in to get sympathy and their way in to do things that they shouldn't be doing. And I really don't like that. I don't like people using those types of things in their life as excuses as to why people should care about them and why people should feel sorry for them and why their life is so hard. And I don't want someone to judge me, whether that's positively or negatively, on those types of things. I would much rather someone judge me on my character and who I am to them as an individual and how I can help them as an individual, not based on, well, because his mum passed away, let's feel sorry for him or let's make sure he feels included. I would much rather someone straight up just say, you're a cunt, I don't like you because of you, than them feeling sorry or sympathy towards me. And the people who use their passings of loved ones, especially people like your parents, like your mum or your dad, I think they are the lowest of lows of people, who use those as cards to be absolute weapons of society. And I really, really do not like people that do that. So I would never want to be placed in a box with people that use that as a scapegoat to not be a nice person or not better yourself or not learn to work on yourself and to figure out that trauma and figure out how you can become a better version through what has happened. I don't want to be molded into the people that use that as an excuse to be bad. I would much rather it be that if someone finds that out, they can look at me and say, it's fucking awesome that he's had to go through such a traumatic thing, but has come out the other end and he's actually quite a decent person.
Mhm. And I know you went through like a turning point
Yeah.
around the age of like 16. Would you say that there's any overlap of like this belief, I guess we can call it, that you have here, right? What you're talking about there at that point in time? Like, is there synergy between those two moments of when you were 16 coming out of what was quite a difficult period of time
Yeah.
and you having that belief of, I'm going to like use this to make something of myself?
Yeah. I guess there was two moments with that, because you're right. There was a slight overlap, but it was maybe just as the way that you worded the question, did I think about it more? And it was that when I was 16, I was going out a little bit more. Not, I didn't drink until I was 18 and stuff like that. I wasn't going out partying like crazy. I wasn't the type of person that I am. But I did start to see other people when I was out who had had things happen to them in their life. And they used that as an excuse to, I don't know, be difficult and those types of things. And I just really, really didn't like it. It really gets to me. It's one of those things, I'm not an angry person, but it's one of those things that genuinely makes me quite angry when people use that as an excuse to be a bad person, or to do bad things to people. But the second one was, I call those years from like when I was 10 to about 16, like my blackout years. I don't really remember much of it. I have snippets and I have understandings of what went on, but I was more, what I feel anyway, was just existing at the time, kind of just there, present. And I got to a point, I remember sitting in bed at night and I couldn't sleep at this time. So all the way up until 16, I was really, really bad at sleeping. I couldn't sleep without sound on. I had to have something going on, because if I was left with my thoughts, it would be really, really dark. I could never seem to think of positive thoughts. It was always the negatives. It was always being in the hospital and hearing that she didn't have long left to live and all that sort of stuff. And I really couldn't have silence. So I was up till 5 o'clock in the morning. You know, you're up for 7 for school and stuff like that. So it was really, really not a great time. And I remembered sitting in my bed, must have been about 2 or 3 in the morning. And I asked myself, is this really what I'm going to do with what she gave me? So my mum was my best friend when I was younger, and a lot of my family tell me that they very much are reminded of my mum when they see me and when they talk to me. And I knew that my mum would be my best friend. And I was thinking at that moment, you know, she raised me to this point, to the point that she could only go to. And yet here's me wasting it away, you know, not doing things, not pushing myself, not getting out there, not living the way that she would want me to live. You know, if she was looking or watching over me in any way, shape, or form, what would she really be thinking at that point in time? Now, I think all of us would go to the sympathy of your parents. It's like, they'd be so proud of you. They'd be so grateful for everything you're doing. But I genuinely, if I was being truly harsh, I was doing nothing at the time. You know, I wasn't pushing myself. I was nervous. I was an anxious person. I wasn't becoming the better version that I wanted to be of myself. And at that moment, I think I realized, yeah, this surely, I can't waste my life for basically her sacrificing everything to raise us to this point, and for me not to use that to be better, to push myself, and to use what life she's given me to not use it in the best way that I can. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And how would you say that those primitive years have now shaped you as a man, where you're at right now?
Oh, good question. I think the biggest one is about the importance of spending time with family. So there's a book that I'm listening to right now. I must have listened to it about 500 times, and it's Kevin Hart's book. Surprisingly, it might be surprising to some people. It's one of his books about the monsters and how to deal with them. And it's essentially his story as to when he was in a car accident and he ended up in the hospital. We couldn't walk or anything like that. He essentially thought his life was over. He cheated on his wife and he got caught and all that. And he talked about the 7 monsters that everyone has in your life and how to sort of control them. And one of the lessons in it is talking about what truly your priorities are in life, genuinely what you truly put above everything else. And what he was saying is that most people would say family is their first thing. Like, family's above everything. Like, family's everything to me. I care so much about them. But then their actions don't align with that. So their actions are that they don't go and see their family. They spend as much time away from their family as they possibly can. They never go and visit them, and they don't text them, and they don't phone them or anything like that. And for me, that's one of my big ones that I am very, very proud to say that I put at the top, but also I actually action at the top. I see my family every single week, multiple times a week. My aunties, my uncles, my grands, my dad, my stepmom, like all of them, I see them continuously because they mean so much to me. And it's because of that that I do all of this. Because we, a little bit more of a personal side of it, we were in the hospital at one point when I would have been 9, just turning 10 at the time, where we were told she didn't have long left to live. And the reality is that can genuinely happen to any of us at any point. Really. Like, you could be told tomorrow that you've only got a month, and that's it. Like, you could have stage 4. There's nothing we can do. That's really, really about it. And you would have heard the book before, The 5 Regrets of the Dying, and the woman who goes in and talks to all of them. And not one of them talks about, I wish I'd worked harder. I wish I'd put more hours into the grind. It was all about, like, I wish I lived true to myself. I wish I'd spent more time with the people I cared for. I wish I'd reached out to the people that I might have not stayed in contact with. Those are the things, to me anyway, that truly matter in life. And I think that happening has shaped me massively into putting those not only as what I say is my priority, but actually as an actionable priority of, I'm living by that, because I don't have all the time in the world left with everyone. I have the time that I have at that moment, and that's it.
Do you think it's a constant reminder of like mortality, and that is at the forefront of your mind? Like, you referenced obviously The 5 Regrets of Dying, and
Yeah.
it's one of my favorite books of all time.
It's a great book.
That keeps it at the forefront of your mind. Like, I have literally that tattooed onto my wrist,
Nice.
to remind me of like death being inevitable, and that nothing is guaranteed other than death and taxes, right?
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that, actually, because I really like watching, I don't know if you ever watched them, like Vikings and Vikings Valhalla and all that sort of stuff. And one of the big things from their religion is obviously about the acceptance of death. So a lot of them wore specific amulets and stuff like that to ensure that they were always reminded that death was inevitable and that they should not fear it, because they will be, welcomed in Valhalla once they die. And it's something that I've really tried to stick with, is that I need to be aware of my mortality at every point. It's one of those things where if we don't have our health, that's all we ever wish for. We always want our health and we always take it for granted. So something I do really try to remind myself at any moment in time is I do this thing. I call it in my mind like the snapshots. So essentially, if I'm with someone, it could be my gran or something like that, and I'm sitting talking to her, I try to. This might sound so weird. I try to basically like take myself out of the situation of where she's at. Now, it's not to say I'm not listening to her. I'm listening to my gran. I always listen to my gran because she'll kill me if I'm not. But it's like you're kind of taking yourself outside that situation to then take that snapshot of what's happening right there and then. So I'd recommend, if anyone's like listening to this and you're next with your family, your mum, your dad, your gran, anything like that, genuinely for a second when they're talking and you're having a conversation with them, like, imagine yourself coming out of your body for a second and then thinking or taking in everything that's happening in that picture. So like the way that their eyes look and the way that their face moves and the way that their mannerisms are as they speak and as they articulate themselves. I don't think enough of us actually realize what that person is doing. I think we're just sometimes there for the sake of it. And I like taking wee snapshots at different points, because usually when you consciously make the effort to take that wee snapshot, you can remember it for longer. So you can remember that little conversation or that time where you took that snapshot. And it's been something that's really, really good for me that I've really enjoyed to do more of. Because I've then been able to take snapshots of certain moments where I'm like, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I've really enjoyed being here in this moment. And I've recognized that I'm in that moment.
I love that. There's a type of meditation as well that can help to almost train your ability to do that, which I find really interesting, which is probably the best type of meditation for like driven entrepreneurial individuals who usually have a predisposition to struggle with things like meditation, sitting still, centering your thoughts and your attention. And ultimately what it is like an active form of meditation where, let's say, for example, you go and sit at your window of your house in one of your rooms, and you look out the window and you put a timer on your phone for 20 minutes, and you're not allowed to move from there. But you meditate with your eyes open. And what that ultimately means is, in that snapshot that you're referencing, which is your full vision, the practice is that you want to bring awareness to as many details as you can in that snapshot. So for example, if I was to sit at the window to my right, I'd be able to see like houses, trees, like my garden, other people's gardens. I'd probably be able to see the beach in the background. And it's being able to pick up in that 20-minute period as many details as possible. What you then start to recognize probably 10 minutes in is that there are many things surrounding you that you never have noticed before. So I've done it in this room, for example. I was talking with a client around this the other day. I've been in this house for 2 years, and I only recently noticed that the texture of my walls is different to the texture of my ceiling. And it's like, why is that important? It's like the context itself isn't important, but that shows that I'm in this office every single day, and I've not had the level of presence to my surroundings to even notice that. So that's a really like great training to be able to strengthen that muscle and your ability to do that. So when you then find yourself in those moments with your loved ones or in those really like awesome experiences, that ability to like take a snapshot and take it all in, as it were, is strengthened.
Yeah, that's awesome. I never actually knew that was a kind of thing to do. So it's cool. And I'd recommend anyone try it just when you're in a moment of something that you just want to remember. Take yourself out that moment for a little second. Just snapshot it. Fit how you're feeling, everything that's sort of going on, because it's a good memory to have.
Nice. I like it. And I'm obviously like with the direction that I've personally gone on over the past like couple of years, and especially over the last 6 months, in going through, which we'll touch on for yourself, like similar types of transitions into probably getting back into alignment of like what is important. And like the word that comes to my mind, back to what you were saying earlier, was like congruency. Those who say that, example given, family is the most important, but if I was to audit your diary and where you're spending your time, I would think that that's the least important thing to you, right? And that's that lack of congruency. And it's trying to make sure that what we say and what we believe is actually being represented through our actions. And I think for both of us, we have brought ourselves and anchored ourselves back to that in recent times. And we're making quite big changes in order to realign ourselves to that. So before we dive into that any further, what I'm curious about for yourself, you've referenced obviously the different pursuits that you've been on kind of thus far. Went to uni to study accountancy, went and did sporting based education, then twitching, all of these things, Twitch streaming. What's been your drive for entrepreneurship? Why have you not just got a 9-to-5 job?
That's an interesting one, because something that Lawrence and John tried to help me with last year was finding more of my purpose, why I do it. And I could never understand why. I didn't understand why I was doing any of it, why I was working, why I got up every morning, why I pushed forward with it. And I had a call recently with one of my clients, actually, and he was asking me why I was doing everything that I was doing. And I said, I've never really had an answer to this, but here's why I believe that's the case. And then I went into this big spiel about my family and how I want to help them and how I want to be able to spend time with them whenever I'd like, and how I'd like to be able to help them whenever I'd like, and lay a hand where need be, and make sure that I can spend time for myself, to explore, to see things, to explore cultures. And he said at the very end of it, I spoke for about 5 minutes straight. He was like, you've just told me your why, like why you do all of this. So for me, and what I thought was a little bit more unconventional, is probably aligned with a lot more people than I think, is that the reason I do all of this and the reason that I didn't get a 9 to 5 was, one, for that freedom to be able to choose what I do when I do it, but two, to not get into a cycle of living for the sake of living and just living to exist and living to be there. Entrepreneurship has always and always will cause you to be on your feet all the time. And if you're not on your toes, you'll simply fail. There's nothing wrong with saying that. I think it's just the case. If you're not willing to move with the times and you're not willing to adapt when things go wrong, you will crumble. And a lot of people do crumble. There's, again, people are at different points in their life and in different times in their life where they will crumble. And all of us have done it at some point or another. But it's whether or not you're willing to get back up on your feet and try again. And I think that's why I do it, because entrepreneurship gives you that ability to not only not waste your time all the time, but also it unlocks a lot more about you as an individual than I think anything that a 9 to 5 job just couldn't, because you're tested in every aspect of your life, every part of it. If you can't handle your emotional maturity when a client comes to you and says your service is crap, that's a part where you need to grow. If you are not able to handle success when it comes, and the first time you hit the money big, you spend it all, that's your financial literacy that you need to improve upon. If you start to run your business and you hire some team members and all of them leave in the first month because what you're doing is scammy and terrible, then that's your ability to understand, well, what am I actually doing? Is this for the betterment of the world, or is this just for an ego thing? So for me, all of those things accumulate into why I never went down that path. One, for that freedom to be able to choose when I spend time with family and to be able to spend time with them where needed. But two, to probably always be kept on my toes, as it's such a fast moving pace, especially nowadays with AI and everything coming into it. Obviously, we could say the dot-com bubble and everything that happened with the internet and how that came, but that was more so when I was just born. So it's more the AI at this point that's probably the biggest change that's going on right now, and how fast everything seems to be moving.
I think I definitely resonate with that myself, where freedom is at the forefront. I think the ability to have autonomy over many different areas of life for me is a personal driver, and I think that naturally attracts a certain type of individual. Also, one of my personal drivers and core values is like growth as well, and something that anyone who is in business comes to realize quite quickly is that the gateway to personal development is your business. Like, it is the biggest driver of self-development. And as much as it frustrates me when people just cite Alex Hormozy left, right, and center, something that he said early doors that always stuck with me was that your business works on you more than you work on it. And yeah, I don't think a truer thing has been said about the pursuit of business. And I sit and think about that quite often, when you get caught up on and in the challenges that you're experiencing, and you come to recognize that you can't sharpen a razor with velvet, right? There needs to be friction. There needs to be difficult patches in order to actually sharpen yourself and your character and your skill set. And I believe, for me at least, the quickest way in order for me to do that and live out my life upon my deathbed, whenever that period may be, and be certain that I have sharpened the razor as much as I possibly could, the quickest vehicle for that is business.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's something that just forces you to get hit way more than anything else ever would. I don't know why what was coming into my mind, but it was The Witcher. Have you ever watched The Witcher?
I haven't. I know of it.
So the Witcher series is basically, he's just a mercenary, really, but he fights monsters and stuff like that. But the Witcher and their sort of clan always reminds me of their training, like castle, of just how much they done in order to become so good at what they do, and how many times they would have swung that sword. Even if you think of just a general knight back in the castle days and stuff like that, of how much they must have trained on a straw man, or some of their fellow knights as well, of how much they swung that sword and failed in order to be so good at what they were doing, that when the time truly came, but it was life or death, they had just sharpened their swords so much that they knew they were winning. They knew that no one could stop them for what they was doing. And I think that's what business does way faster than anything ever could.
Agreed. Think back to any historical group of soldiers and warriors, right? Any samurai, as you say, there is a training center, right? There is a training center where you get your ass kicked every single day. And that is, by definition, the only way that you stop getting your ass kicked, right? So you can't go around it. You can't skip steps.
No.
And I think in business, we try and skip steps, right? We feel that friction. We feel the heat. We're like, I'm getting my fucking ass kicked. It's like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to skip this bit and go to the nice bit that I see on Instagram where you got your, like, what color's your Bugatti?
Yeah.
And, you know, all that shit. And you can't. Like, it is getting your ass kicked every single day when there is very few people around you who, one, understand, two, can help, and three, like, care. So I think that is, on all fronts, the quickest way to train yourself to become a high character, high skill set individual in today's society, at least for us in the West.
I think that's where as well why it's so important to be around others who do see it from your perspective and have tried it before. Because I mean, even conversations that we've had when we first met, the growth that I would have gained as an individual learning from you would have been far more than, you know, asking my gran, what do you think about this? It always reminds me, I don't know why I'm going into historical, like, medieval stuff. I'm a big fan of this, but all the stories seem to be coming to my mind today. So we're running with them. But there's an amazing story. And there's actually a series on Netflix I'd highly recommend watching it. It's called The Ottomans, I believe, on Netflix. It could be completely wrong. But it's a story of Mehmed, and he tried to take Constantinople. Now, Constantinople, for anyone who's curious or wants to know, was basically like the centerpiece of the world at the time for trade. It was locked to a lot of different countries that they could all transport goods to and from, and therefore everyone basically wanted it. And the Italians had held it for thousands of years by this point, and there had been around about 22 other leaders who tried to take Constantinople, and all of them failed. Every single one of them tried to take it. They couldn't take it. The walls were too strong. They weren't able to get through. And at this time, Mehmed studied all of them. He was a big fan of Alexander the Great at the time. And he studied all of them. He wanted to be as successful as all of them. And they built like one of the biggest cannons that had ever been built to basically take down these walls. So long story short, they were able to do it. He was able to outsmart and outmaneuver the Italians and was able to take Constantinople. And they held it, I believe, for quite a long time after that as well. Now, what I love about that story so much is that 22, I think it was either 22 or 23 others had been completely hit and struck down before Mehmed had basically learned from all of them, all of the people that got hit, all of the people that got failed, as to what they'd done wrong and what they didn't aim to do to achieve what they were looking for. And I think in business, that's the exact same. By being able to not only learn from others, but by being around others who can think further ahead than you, that can think outside the box, that can do things that are a little bit unconventional, which I believe entrepreneurship is, especially in the world that we live in. It's such a powerful way to basically be able to take Constantinople. And I think that sort of reference, being able to take it, is to take control of you. Like that best version of yourself, outmaneuver what everyone wants you to do, outmaneuver all the things that will put you into that robotic state where you'll never do anything with your life, but be around others who will think outside the box and be more and do more and push you to be the best version of yourself, to eventually take that and actually take control of what's going on.
Hey, fucking man. I think it also gives us a great insight into where you're spending your spare time in these story arcs of the past, in these historical. There's a theme, right? There's a theme going on today, and I like it. The mythical element of war. I feel like you're prepping for some form of war. You're in the trenches right now, and again, right? It's all got parables to business. It is a war zone. You have to prep. You have to be well prepared. You have to learn from those who have fallen, before you, so that you can learn from their mistakes without having to bear their scars, as the saying goes. So I like that. That's a really interesting story. I've never heard that one before, but perfectly fitting for the journey and the game, I think, of entrepreneurship. So talk me through like your time of co-owning Young and Lazy.
Yeah, it was probably the best 3 years of my life so far. John came to me 3 years ago and asked me if I wanted to basically be a part of what he was building, which at the time was just a network for young entrepreneurs to push each other to be better. And he didn't really have a vision for it. It was just he wanted other people on board. And I wanted to be a part of something that was with someone else. So John and I started the business when it was doing 1.4K a month. I didn't get paid for the first 7 months of doing it whilst I was at uni, studying marketing and business, which fucking taught me nothing. So that was a waste of time. We worked so hard to get that business up to it. You know, first few months we got up to 3-4K. The following January, I got paid my first grand salary from the business. Amazing, unreal feeling, rolling in it. And then, yeah, from there, we just slowly, gradually moved it up. And by November of 2024, we managed to hit 33K in revenue, which was our highest month. I think it was 15K profit, net. So the fact that we were able to do that the full of last year, consistent 20K months as well. Honestly, it's 3 years of my life so far. We done so much together. We achieved so much. We pushed each other to become better versions of ourselves. And I think we really did, you know, became more mature, being able to work in teams, being able to push yourself when you never thought you could, being able to handle the worst times in business that they throw at you and being able to do that together. Yeah, such an awesome time. Absolutely loved everything that me and John done together.
What did you learn about yourself during that period?
How to become more risk seeking. That was one of the biggest things that John taught me. John is very much a seeker of risk. He loves to take big leaps. And it's great. But at the time when I first started and when I first joined him, I was not that person. I did not take risks. I was very much, let's do the things that allow me to build safety. And that was probably my sort of core word. John was very much, I've got this idea, let's just send it. And we both worked on basically how do we mold this into something that can work for both of us. So John taught me very heavily how to, one, be more confident in myself and what I actually do, but also two, be more risk seeking, you know, actually push that. And it's probably one of the reasons why I decided to take the leap on myself and go and build this new business, because he helped me get to a position where I realized, okay, this is what I want. I want to stand up for that and not be afraid of what that future may hold.
Something that's interesting that don't always get the opportunity to get an insight into is the dynamic of co-owning and being like that dynamic of how do you manage responsibilities, the difference in, as you've mentioned there, personality types and character traits and obviously skill sets, etc. What did that look like as an evolution over those years that you were working together?
Yeah. The first thing that we laid out to begin with, and we always talked about this, being open and honest with the communication. Not enough people do that just in general, even in relationships, like normal relationships. People don't talk. And if you can't have the challenging conversations to begin with, you're never going to make it work, ever. It's just not going to happen. If you can't go to someone and say, this isn't working, you need to solve this, and then they just come back with you with screaming at you, you're fucked. You're already fucked. You should have ran before you even started. So in the beginning, John and myself were essentially doing everything 50-50. This is hilarious. Me and John took all the sales calls together. Our close rate was unreal. We had about like 80 to 90% close rate. I'm not even kidding.
Well, as a three, so like
me and John, and then the person on the call, and me and John would like riff off of each other. We probably still have the recording somewhere. We were awesome. We were incredible.
That's like good cop, bad cop.
So we really had the dynamic to begin with of 50-50. Everything split down the middle. And we were just kind of half it. And then how that became more of an evolution was when we realized that we could do double the output if we actually focused on the things that we were really good at. So continuing on the open and honest communication, we decided to start splitting things into where we actually thrived. And that's exactly what we've done. And that allowed us to bring in Jack, which was our first time hire. That allowed us to push forward and reach that 10 and then 20K month, get our first investment, all of that sort of stuff. So I would say that the starting point was very much just in the trenches, get everything done, like do your best, work hard together and see how we can move this forward. The second part was then sort of splitting those responsibilities and understanding how you could best fit to be better. And the sort of third and final phase, was more about how do we truly take this to the next level whilst aligning with the vision that we see for this company and this bigger vision for the company. But at the forefront of all of those was communication. Every single time we would talk, we would have conversations, we'd be open, we'd be honest, there'd be challenging times, there'd be good times, there'd be hard, easy, so much of it. But the biggest thing that we always try to do is keep communication at the forefront. Talk with one another, be open and honest, learn about one another, how we actually worked, and seeing where we could actually grow as people.
Because it's a dynamic that can often be like very complex, and we all hear these horror stories, right, of those who go into business together and it ends the relationship, for starters. Like the relationship becomes very like bitter, twisted, and sour quite frequently. It can often be like the demise of the business itself, but due to usually the toxic nature of the breaking up, let's call it. So it's great to get an insight into what that's like, and to have that core pillar for those who are thinking of getting into business with someone else, or those who are in business. It can be either a helpful reminder of how to manage those relationships, or give someone the blueprint of what you need to keep at the forefront before embarking on a partnership, really, with someone else. I think, like you say, it is treating it like a partnership. It's recognizing that I'm not getting into a relationship with someone because I expect them to be perfect. I understand that they have flaws. I have flaws, and it's our ability to be able to navigate those, which is going to ultimately strengthen the relationship. And typically, the strength of the relationship then correlates to the strength of the business.
Yeah, John and I have different traits that work better for us as individuals, but we understood that and were able to accept that those things is what made us unique and what gave us that way of thinking. If you can't have difficult conversations with the person that you're wanting to go into business with, don't go into business with them. And it's not a bad thing. I would never, John is someone I admire so much. And I want to see him succeed in every single format for what he's doing. And I'm going to support him in doing that in every single place that I possibly can. And I think that's because we both understand it's bigger than the time that we work together. For me, the way that I see it is that the time that John and myself worked together, we simply got to the end of that chapter, and it was the time to move on to the next one in both of those, whatever paths that we were going on. I know John and myself's paths will cross multitudes of times over the next few decades, because I absolutely love working with John and I love seeing what he's doing. I even talked at the YNL event literally on Saturday to take a segment because I'm still a part of the company. So for me, it's very much about that bigger picture thing. I know what John's going to do is going to be awesome. I know what I'm going to do is going to be awesome. And I know we're going to support each other to actually do that. And I think that's realizing, because we started that relationship with communication at the forefront and knowing who we were becoming as people, it was never about the toxicity, and it was never about hating one another or going personal with it because things were ending. It was about accepting that things were moving on to the next chapter, and how do we support one another to get even further as we go into this next one as well.
Of which segs nicely into what this looks like. Talk to me about what is next. What is the vision for you moving forward? I know pre us coming on air, we were talking about sometimes it feels like wading through mud, trying to figure out the next steps. Yeah. Talk to me about what the vision is.
This is the first time ever in my life that I have stopped doing something and I've known what I'm going to do next. Every single time that I've started something new, it's because I just didn't want to do it anymore and I wanted to start something new. This is the first time where I've ever been pulled in a direction where my gut was telling me, you need to give this a go. You need to do this. So that direction was essentially on systems for businesses. For the last couple of years, I mean, for 7 years, I've used systems to better my life. I actually used Notion to structure how I done my university degree and basically pass with distinction because I was able to organize how I was doing uni whilst I was doing my Twitch stream and stuff and trying to build that business. But over the last year specifically, I started working with companies to actually improve their systems. And we worked with over 300 entrepreneurs over the last 3 years. And that was the systems area that I always got dragged to because I really enjoyed it. And turns out I was quite good at it. So for me, that next step is now helping businesses scale through their systems. You know, I've been able to help companies double their revenue, hire more people into their team, scale their company, save them a ton of time purely through the systems that they're implementing. And it's such a big problem in this space because everyone always looks to the marketing and the sales, but people then don't realize if you actually just fix the systems, you could probably save tens of thousands a month on people that you probably don't need because they're actually doing the wrong thing, or even things that are not going to make you more money because you're spending so much time on it. So it's such an interesting one for me where this is the first time I've ever stopped something and knew that what I was moving on to next was actually a passion, was actually something that I was being dragged towards last year, and eventually with my gut just saying, listen, mate, you need to give this a go.
So synergy, as we've obviously previously discussed around positions and actions that we've taken, firing blind, it's instead of ready, aim, fire, it's ready, fire, aim, right? It's you're being drawn towards something, knowing that this is no longer the thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know exactly what the next thing is. So you step out into the darkness and into the uncertainty. And that comes with challenge as well, right?
Of course.
What have been some of those challenges for you?
I think the biggest thing that you always realize first and foremost is that you don't have a team anymore to like bounce ideas off of. You know, you don't have that person to message in the morning and just say, hey, I'm doing this today. I've got this. Is there any thoughts on this? What's your thoughts? What's your questions? All that. It's very much you're just kind of locked in doing it yourself. But I believe that's necessary. Personally, anyway, I believe that's necessary for everyone, especially in the beginning. It's one of those things that I was thinking of where when I was setting up everything in the business, I could have went to everyone and asked what their thoughts were on it. But at the end of the day, because I've not proven the concept or because it's not done, it doesn't actually matter what anyone has to say because it should be from me and what I'm doing and what I see this business being. Where I believe people's input becomes far more helpful is when you've actually got something up and running and then taking the advice of those that have done it before you. So you're gaining genuine clarity from someone who's even walked the walk. I guess the other biggest thing for me is you've got so much more time freedom, so much less responsibility in a sense. So having to, I guess, force feed that responsibility into your life the same way that you had before, but in a way that works for you. And what I mean by that is, you know, we were delivering to 50, 60 odd clients every single week, and I was the kind of forefront of that. So going from that to essentially zero at that point, your level of responsibility significantly decreases. So how do you create that even though you don't have the clients to do it, but in a way that is positive, that's going to push the business to become better? So those have probably been the two major ones that have come up.
Something that I was talking about recently with someone is the manufactured pressure that I think it sounds like at least that you've created for yourself. I know that was something that I definitely did, in that you cut off, let's say, supply of oxygen to the business.
Yeah.
Thus, there's only so long it can go without having oxygen, right? And that puts you back up against the wall. There's a saying that I like, which is pressure makes diamonds or it bursts pipes. And this is where you find out what you're made of, right? And it's manufacturing an element of healthy intensity, not too much where it becomes completely overwhelming to the degree where you're paralyzed by the intensity, and then also like just not having any, where we can be too slow in our movement. There is no urgency really, so we therefore don't have any reason to act now, no reason to make the tough decision, go and do the hard thing, go and, you know, get on the podcast, go do the talk, go make the proposal, because there's no sense of real urgency. Especially if you have like cash reserves and that type of thing, it's very easy to rationalize why not to do the hard thing. So I think manufacturing games, manufacturing challenges can help you to create a safe and healthy level of intensity and pressure to poke the bear within you to get moving and get working.
Exactly. You do. You burn the boats. You know, you set sail, you land and you burn them. You can't go back. So
Yeah.
you can only go forward.
Yeah, agreed. What's next, like 90 days looking like?
Next 90 days is heavy on the content. That is my biggest thing that I want to try this time with this business. I've built businesses on content before. I built a YouTube channel that grew to 7K subs, 650,000 views in less than a year. And I was able to build a brand off of that, but I never really monetized it. It wasn't really the thing I wanted to do. I built a Twitch stream that had a Twitter following as well, up to 1,000 subs. Was able to make, money off of that. And then with YNL, I'd had somewhat of a personal brand, but it was more so the background stuff that I had done. And that was what got us to where we wanted to go, or partly of what got us to where we wanted to go. This time, I want to build a personal brand that truly has authority for me and what I'm wanting to do. So the newsletter, the YouTube, the Instagram, all of that collectively coming together to build the authority as to that I am becoming the literal best systems builder for businesses that are wanting to scale in the world. Like, that is the aim. Show people that I am putting in the work and I am also that person, and be raw and honest about it, because I think I'm at a point now where I just don't care. Which is great. It's not that you don't care. We always care. It'd be a lie to say that we don't care what people think, as we will be judged for whatever we say. But I'm definitely at a point now where even things that I've been sharing with you on this talk, I would have never have talked about really as in depth as we have, or never have pushed my opinion as much as I have previously. So the biggest thing for me over the next 90 days is build that authority and trust as to that I am serious about building what I'm building, and showcase that to people.
And I'm assuming the main thing that you would have hidden previously is your love for prehistoric
Yes.
war stories, right?
Yes. I'm an absolute. I love history. See, especially that era. See, like the castles and siege era. Oh my, it is so good. There's a guy, I do not know how to pronounce his name. If you go onto YouTube, he rates movies and how they interpret, like how it's actually like in real life, and he basically just tells everyone to build ditches, because that's what genuinely keeps people away. Because you build the ditch and you cause them to fall in the ditch, and then they can't take the castle the same way. Go find him on YouTube because he's awesome. But historical stuff is amazing, mate. I love it.
Love that. Okay, we're going to move into the unfiltered free.
Okay.
So for context, for yourself and also for those listening, new segment, the unfiltered three. There are 3 questions that I'm going to ask Andy. He has no idea what the questions are, and I can't provide any follow-up questions. So you can go as deep on these questions as you would like. I am not allowed to follow up. Okay. Question 1. What part of your identity have you had to let go in order to grow?
That's a really good question. Is this it? Oh, you can't even ask. I can't even ask a follow-up question. I was going to. The one that comes to my mind when you asked that question was my emotional attachment to success. So I thought that when I had succeeded at something, I couldn't go back, because if I went back, then it had meant I wasn't succeeding anymore, and therefore people would see me differently. Kevin Hart, in his book that I was talking about before, calls it the can't go back monster. And it's essentially, if you've achieved something before, you can't go back to what you were doing previously, because you've now achieved a height. You therefore can't go under that height. And if you've went under that height, you've failed. So something that I used to be quite wary of is that anytime I was doing quite good, I was more confident at speaking to other people about that, because people judge us naturally. But when I maybe wasn't doing so well, or things weren't, or were just starting up, I was always more nervous to talk to people, because people would judge you and ask questions based off of that. Whereas when you just give them the credibility of that I'm doing good, they don't really question it. Wherefore, when you're doing bad, or bad in quotations, they are more likely to judge. But for me, what I've tried to let go of a lot more is that it doesn't actually matter why they judge. It matters far more as to why I feel that way. And that if I know the bigger vision, and I know the bigger purpose, and I know what I'm aiming towards, it doesn't matter whether I'm sleeping under a bridge or I'm in a penthouse somewhere. I know it's towards what that vision is going to hold. So that was probably the biggest thing.
What's something that not many people know about you?
I like to talk about castles and sieges. I'm just going to leave it at that.
What's the biggest weakness you're currently working on?
I'd still say the biggest weakness that I'm working on is risk itself. Although I have grown massively and been able to risk more, I still seek safety at every road that I go down. I'm good with my money. I believe I'm good with my mind, as in I go to therapy, I look after myself, I try to rationalize things in my head and logically think them through. I don't believe I'm that angry of a person, so I don't outburst on people. I would rather talk about things and not get emotionally attached to it. But I'm still someone that likes safety. I like to know that I'm safe and that I'm not going to fail and that things aren't going to go wrong. When in reality, I know they're going to go wrong and I know I'll fail and I know I'll fall, and I'm not scared of that. I'm not scared to fall and I'm not scared to fail and I'm not scared to put myself out there because I've done it. But I'm still very much, I know inner me still looks for safety, still looks for, well, I could do this and I could make a little bit of money and I'll be fine and I'll be okay. And if I make this, I'll be fine. I'll be okay. I want to really move into the mind of, I will do this because I know it will make such a large impact that it would be impossible for me not to make a fuck ton of money anyway. And I want to have that at every road that I take. And I'm really trying to install that into everything that I'm doing with this business, where it doesn't fucking matter what happens for the first few months, because if I keep doing this and I keep showing it, I am going to beat my competition. They will not be able to compete because I know I am so willing to get so good at what I'm doing that they simply could not be as good as I am.
Let's go to war, man. Let's just fuck it off and just go to war.
That's it.
Let's do this.
Spell the ditch.
In conclusion, we just need to build the ditch. That's what we need to do. No, I like that, man. Really inspiring. Final segment, final question. And this is the sovereign shift, right? So we're, especially given your answer earlier, what you're doing this for, freedom was the first thing that came out of your mouth. Sovereignty is the ability to self-govern. It's like the highest power. I feel, at least for myself, I am constantly on the pursuit of sovereignty. It's like, how can I be self-governing? How can I be free of ailments, free of ill thought, free of location, free to do whatever the fuck, whenever the fuck I want, right? All of the above. I would like us to finish and land the final plane on, like, what's one lesson or truth that you now live by or have recently learned that you wish that you had learned sooner and you think other people would benefit from hearing?
Biggest one that comes to my mind from a lesson that you can take is that the people you talk to on a daily basis matter far more than you actually think. And I'm not meaning in the sense of your family, because, you know, family is someone that you see on a consistent basis, but I'm meaning if you are ambitious, find people that are not only ambitious, but are genuinely good people. It wasn't something maybe I learned more recently. It's something I've learned over the years of being in business, is that the majority of entrepreneurs are just looking out for themselves. And there's nothing wrong with that. We should be inherently selfish in certain aspects. But there's a lot of people out there who will only ever message you when they want something from you, who will only ever talk to you when you become successful, who will only ever treat you kindly if they see that you've got a lot of followers on social media, and who will use you just because they can get something out of it. Genuinely good people exist who want to help you succeed and want to help you become better and want to help you get to that next level. But you need to realize that you probably have to go through the shit of people that are going to use you at some points to know what you're genuinely looking for. And if you think, oh, well, I don't have really anyone that I know in my life who would do that to me, you might be that person that only messages people when you need something, or that doesn't actually treat people that well, or treats people differently based on their follower count or anything like that. That might be something that you have to work on. But genuinely good people exist in this space, and you need to do everything in your power to be around those that are truly good. And how you'll usually be able to see if they're truly good is building on yourself and your own character to know that you have worked out how you can emotionally handle problems that are going on, how you can think through things logically, how you can't outburst, how you take responsibility, how you push yourself forward to that next level, and then find others who are willing to do that too. Because more often than not, those people are the ones that are willing to get in the trenches with you, who are willing to fucking build the ditches with you, and who are genuinely wanting to push themselves forward. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons that I learned. I used to admire people that I thought were successful in business and that were doing well in business because they were further ahead than me. And it wasn't until I got to a point where we managed to hit those consistent 20K months and that 30K month mark that I realized they were no different to who I was before. It was just purely because they were at a different stage in their life and a different stage of their business. And that didn't mean that I couldn't provide value to them. And that did not mean that they were any better than me. It just meant that they were at a different stage of where their life and where their business was at. And it meant far more about the character of them as a person than to where their business actually lied. Because I know people that do 100, 200K a month and they're fucking pricks and they're not genuinely good people. And I know people that don't run businesses and they don't care for running their businesses and they're some of the best people in the world. And it's why it's so important to be around those who want to see you become the best version of yourself and will uplift you to be able to do that.
And you, sir, are one of those people. So you're a pleasure to know and a pleasure to be around all the time. So I'm grateful to have you in my life and for your time today to be on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been absolutely awesome. I've loved it. It's been class.
Good, man. I bet you didn't think you'd be talking about the ditches.
No, but it's good. I enjoyed it.
That's what we're here for. That's what we're here for. Where can people find more of what you're doing?
Biggest places probably to find more, Instagram and LinkedIn at the moment, where you'll be able to see my series of 10 months before my landlord kicks me out, when I'm trying to build a 6-figure one-person business before that happens. And yeah, those will be the places you'll be able to find more about me, my story, and what I'm.
Awesome. And I'll chuck all those in the show notes as well so everybody can get access to you more freely.
Amazing.
Amazing, dude. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.